Hi, we're Group 10, and our organization is Buckner International. Our group members are Becca Cotten, Melanie Kirchner, Madison Hoover, Cameron Gilbert, Andrew Waters, and me, Bobby Jones. Buckner began with Father Buckner and 3 orphans. They moved from Tennessee to Texas over 135 years ago. For more than 135 years, Buckner International has been transforming lives through hands-on ministry, serving the most vulnerable from the beginning to the ending of life.
Planning is important because it gives an organization a sense of direction and purpose. Planning is also a useful way of getting managers to participate in decision-making about the appropriate goals and strategies for an organization. It also helps to coordinate managers and control managers. When we talked to Sarah, the Ministry Engagement Coordinator, I asked her about what her planning strategies were and what the hardest, easiest parts were with her planning. She said that she really doesn't plan ahead much, but Buckner does have committees that help her plan. Most of the planning that Sarah does is for the fundraisers to help Buckner. Buckner keeps the same events mostly, and they do not seek new opportunities. One thing they do well that is an aspect of planning is fill the current needs they have and don't make new opportunities. I think this is a very important concept that not all nonprofit organizations understand. Buckner strives to always keep their children first, and this is even in their mission statement. That drives most of the service and helps keep the goal in mind. Something that Buckner can improve on is coming up with an effective strategy. I didn't feel like Sarah had an effective way to carry out most of Buckner's plans, and most of the time we volunteered, not everything was thought of, and the volunteers were lacking. My recommendation for Sarah and Buckner International is for them to perform a SWOT analysis. I think that Buckner has been doing things the same for a long time, but I think that the times are changing and Buckner should update their planning process by identifying strengths and weaknesses, identify potential opportunities and threats, and finally determine specific strategies for achieving the organization's mission and goals.
Planning is a useful way of getting managers to participate in decision-making about the appropriate goals and strategies for an organization.
Organization architecture in the workplace is defined as the general order and structure a group or mass of procedures is processed in, and how effectively and efficiently organizational resources are used. Buckner is highly effective at their tasks that involve organizational structure, but they lack a bit of efficiency in the same area. The main reason why Buckner is so effective in their organization is through the use of small job descriptions between each person in the organization, making their roles specific and easier to manage. Buckner uses many different committees to complete their larger tasks within the organization. The downside of Buckner's organizational structure is their efficiency. Through the thousands of different volunteers that they have to interact with on a daily basis, there comes a larger room for inefficiency. The volunteers on the days of the events that they volunteer for oftentimes have no idea where or what they are supposed to do and have to ask a staff member what they are supposed to do. But other than that, overall, Buckner has a great organizational structure overall, and they should be very proud of it. But I could suggest one thing to Buckner I would say to improve would be to convey volunteers their jobs and purpose better. By simply giving each volunteer a sheet listing the tasks they must accomplish for the event in question, Buckner can create an atmosphere of helpfulness instead of the volunteers feeling unimportant because they do not have a task to accomplish. Buckner is a great organization, and through working with them over these last few weeks, I hope they continue to impact the city of Dallas. Organizational structure is the basic way that most tasks and procedures in a management system are sequenced.
While working at Buckner, we mainly worked with Sarah Jones, the volunteer coordinator. Over Sarah, there's a department leader who plans weekly meetings and informs team members on their progress towards achieving their goals. Buckner instills leadership into their employees by team meetings, and they rely on board members to list out their goals, and then committee leaders share the organizational goals with the individual teams. The leadership at Buckner is very purposeful and transparent, relying heavily on direct communication. All of the employees exemplify servant leadership as they are pro-socially motivated and depend on referent power to learn more about their company and in turn help others. Buckner does a great job aligning their employees and motivating them to accomplish goals while focusing on Buckner's mission of putting the children first. Employees are able to participate in new employee training to learn about Buckner's culture and gain direction, and they are also able to attend leadership retreats to participate in team bondings where they can exchange new ideas to help improve Buckner. Through the leadership retreats, employees become more involved and help benefit the company as a whole. One thing that Buckner can improve on is the volunteer aspect of the organization. Buckner does a great job motivating their employees, but because they are such a large company, they do not have a lot of time to devote to volunteers. Sarah is the only person who deals directly with volunteers, and I think they should expand on this department to have more opportunities for volunteers. I think by hiring more employees to be associated with volunteers, Buckner can become more personal with their volunteers and allow them to share their leadership and goals with the community around them. I think Buckner would be able to engage in developmental consideration with their volunteers through phone calls and more employees at Buckner events. Buckner can then not only have employees striving for their goals, but also communities who understand and feel empowered to help Buckner become more successful. Leadership is the practice of using influence over people in which inspiration, motivation, and direction of activities is used in order to achieve desired goals.
Like other major organizations, the controlling process starts from the moment an employee is hired up through the application process. But unlike other major organizations, Buckner is a faith-based company who hires individuals with a faith-based mindset. So controlling the employee's attitude, morals, and values in relation to the company usually takes care of itself. But as far as controlling issues that arise, Buckner has a strict get it taken care of now type mentality. When we spoke to the ministry engagement coordinator, she told us that all the employees in their department go into the conference room, lock the door, and no one leaves until the issue is resolved. But Buckner has been around for over 100 years, so most major issues have already been solved and are easily avoided. The hardest control issue that arises in this company is that of controlling volunteers. With over 20,000 volunteers a year, it is very hard for them to put potential volunteers through a valid process for being accepted. Along with that comes emailing all the volunteers about times, places, and their distinct jobs for working on a weekly basis. Buckner has been around for 135 years, so it goes without saying they are doing a pretty great job from the top to the bottom of the corporation. But one thing they do specifically well is communication. When we met with Sarah, the ministry engagement coordinator, she consistently went back to the open line of communication between both her upper level bosses and her subordinates under her. If someone needs anything at all, they have multiple co-workers around them who would love to help them, so they don't have to worry about upsetting or disappointing their bosses. Having an open line of communication is vital for any company to be successful. One thing that could improve on from a control standpoint is who they let volunteer. With so many volunteers, it's hard to examine each one with diligence. But when you're working with kids, you can never be too safe. A longer and more thorough volunteer application process would be a great way to improve on what is already a great organization. To control is to evaluate how well an organization is achieving the goals and taking action to maintain or improve performance.
Buckner International is a great organization. They do many things well, and they have an established plan that works for them. However, a big issue that our team saw was Buckner's volunteer process. They can improve on this by coming up with a strategy for volunteers so they have something to do right when they arrive. They could organize the volunteers' information to a database and give them better directions as to why they are there. To go along with that, they need to have more people that deal directly with volunteers. Every time we went, Sarah Jones was the only person engaging every volunteer. She does a great job, but it is hard for her to give everyone a task to do. Lastly, we feel that they need a more in-depth application process for volunteers, because as of right now, all someone has to do to volunteer with children is check a box on the online application saying that they are good with kids. We feel that Buckner should implement background checks in their application process as well. This could get expensive since background checks cost anywhere from $20 to $50, but the security of having cleared volunteers working with the children is worth the cost. We loved working with Sarah and with Buckner, and we hope to work with them again in the future.